And this is our review session. So, we're going to cover a couple things that we missed, and then, any questions you guys have, we'll go through. And we aren't going to go 2 hours tonight because, it's just a review, unless you guys have a lot of questions. And then next sessions, we start the appliques. So we'll do a series of applique from like the, automatic to, how to kind of tweak that a little bit. And, I do the expressive webinars too, so they're like one step ahead of you guys, but we had a lot of fun with the appliques and stuff. So, all right, I'm going to go ahead, and these are the borders stitched out. I'm sorry?
You got the recorder on?
I do. I'm recording. Aren't you proud of me? I remembered this time.
I am. I am proud.
Well, we had, Shirley's probably wondering what we're talking about. A couple of years ago when I did the webinars, I forgot to turn on the recorder for a couple sessions. So, but, okay, these are the borders. I did go through, like, I kind of threw those borders together, and I had to go through and resequence this so I had fewer jumps and, resave my motif. But, we were discussing this one. I would have made this a little bit wider or used a little more narrow ribbon. But, you could also put decorative stitches down the side here. Okay, and let me go forward. The entre-deux, I personally was, a little worried that it might fall apart. So I thought, okay, I'm going to just pull out the entre-deux stitches. And, I did stitch it on like the violin, like I said, and washed it away and gave it a couple of tugs, and it holds together. And that may be easier, especially since we're using wash away. That might be easier to just sew the entre-deux separately and insert it by, just zigzagging through into the holes, right? But, I was, impressed that the entre-deux held up very good, and I'm sitting here actually pulling on it now, and it's holding together. And what I used was the signature 60 weight cotton on this. I didn't do rayon. You could do rayon. You could do polyester if you want a little bit of sheen. But I thought, I'm going to go ahead and do this more heirloomy, because generally you're using a 50 or 60 weight cotton, right? And Signature has a series now of 60 weight cotton colors for quilting and for, and for like, heirloom sewing such as this, right? All right, so these are, you guys have these files. Even though we're kind of in review, if you have any questions as we go along through the next series of webinars, because you guys are signed up for all of them, just send me those and we'll review those at the beginning, even if it's for the session before, okay? I'd rather, that you guys, got the section, even if, you have questions like, into the next section, okay? So let me go ahead and I've got to move the controls out of my way here. You guys don't see them, but they take up a chunk of my screen. And let me close this down. And here's the file. I just had it open on the screen. But what I did, Barbara, is I just kind of ignored this, and I took this piece out here and just stitched it. And I could stitch that over and over and over and over to make entre-deux, lining it up in the hoop to make, one big chunk of entre-deux, right? So now, one of the things that we have not covered so far that I do want to cover is the array tools. Okay, like see these tools that are kind of blacked out up here? And these, it's because I don't have anything in the program. So I'm going to go ahead and change my hoop too. I'm going to go put the large hoop in. But, I'm just going to grab something from the gallery. And let's find one of the designs that has some satin stitching to it. We'll use this big flower. And I'm going to put the flower, these little dots allow me to like anchor, and then I can rotate, right, and move this any way I want. So we're going to put that little flower like that. I'm going to hit escape and just have this one flower. Okay, now these array tools are kind of fun, because if I'm doing something, a little more beefy than this maybe, or, if I want to make something out of one piece repeat, then all I have to do is see how these highlight now. Okay, see these?
Yes.
This is an instant move to center. See, it just moves it to center, but it won't say yes unless I hit enter. Okay? That's what that little, half circle is up there, or a 3/4 circle is moved to center. This
Okay.
is a copy and mirror to the corners. Wherever this is placed is where it's going to copy and mirror it, see? And it's giving me a preview before I commit to it. And if I say yes, I just hit enter, and it's mirrored those, but you can see them overlapping, right? So I would probably want to move something that big maybe out a little bit, and then say, okay, automatically mirror to the corners, and there you go. So if you had, if you had like a corner section or a border design that had like a corner, or like, the corner for napkins, and you wanted to make something a little more blocky, then that's when you would use the move to, corner. However, let me get rid of this. We'll find something that's a little more, let's try this one, see what this one does. Oh, that one's too little. Hold on. If we had something that was a little more symmetrical, I guess, then that would make it a little bit easier. We'll use this one. Okay, so there's my little flower design, right? And if I wanted to, I'm going to make this bigger. I don't know if I like that, but... Okay, so there's my flower design. I stretched it out, but if I wanted to say mirror to corner, you can see how I could mirror that very easily. Depending on where I put this is going to be how it mirrors. See?
Okay.
If I put it all the way up here, it's going to mirror, proportionally around the screen. Okay, now this other one, let me move this back to the center. This is fine. Copy to circle. Okay, so see how tight it is right now, and there's 4 of them, right? And I just let it do 4 of them. Okay, but the beauty of this is, I'm going to move this out a little bit. If I say copy to circle, here's my number. 5, 6, 7, 8. I can keep going. I think there's probably a limit, but, obviously I wouldn't want to do that with this design. But if you had something, lacier or smaller, you could actually do it quite a bit. I'm going to take this back down to like 8. Okay, maybe we can go 9. And you can see what it does. It creates like a wreath effect. And it does it, very quickly. And I can do this with multiple things in the program. So if I have something, like this, and I'm making, let's change the color. If I want to make something very detailed, or, like have 2 things going on here, inside of each other, I can do either the corner or this as many times as I want. See? So I wanted to show you those tools, and they're just quick little things. Like if you, for example, if you're making like a lace design, that the lace piece is repeated generally, right? Or if you're making something that's symmetrical, one piece is generally repeated. So you could actually just take that one piece and use this tool. You would just have to, double check where it lined up at. And you do have some, like each piece is its own individual piece, see? So, you can move these and adjust these and resize them if you have one that's a little just not quite fitting. Or you can select them all because, we have the 2 colors. I could change the size on this very easily. But I did want to show you those tools because they're fun to play with. So I'll try to send you off a couple of files.
Can you do that with an initial?
Yeah. Let me get rid of everything here. You could go into, say we're going to do monogramming, and I'm just going to pick like B. Height, let's make this a little bit bigger. Oh, fancy monogram, it's waiting for more than one thing. Okay, when I go into monogram, it's waiting for like 3 or 2. But, okay, so I could take this whole monogram and do it. Or if you just want to do like one letter, go into your alphabet. And then, here's my fancy monogram and just pick, a letter. And it'll let you just put that one letter in. And then, resize it as large as you want. Rotate it however you want. And then, you can use the corner or you can use this. Now, and see how pretty that ends up being? It's telling me I'm going to overlap, and I'm going to say, yeah, let's go ahead and overlap. Okay.
Oh.
So you can do this with anything in the program. Even if it has like multiple pieces, you can do this with multiple pieces. Multiple pieces, multiple colors. Let me see if I can, let's find our design gallery. See if I can find something that, it might be better off just to go to open. Let me go to open and let's go to, there should be an embroidery album. Here we go. And let's see what's in, there we go. Okay, so these are little tiny florals that come with your program, right? And we can pick something like this. And I'm going to go back to the big hoop. So, but, see how this has multiple pieces, multiple colors. I could put this up here and say, you know what, go ahead and, hold on. Let me undo that. When you go to use that corner tool, it's got to sit on one side or the other. Like if I put it dead center like that, it'll just put the two on top of each other. So it doesn't matter if it has multiple pieces or multiple colors. I can still do either tool. See? As long as I select, I could even just select random pieces like maybe I don't want all of this, I just want the flower portion, right? I could select just that piece to mirror. So I don't have to select the whole design. I can select whatever pieces out of it that I want. In or just this piece, right? So, it depends on what you want to do. And you can do this in combinations too. Like maybe I want to select just that, just this little fleur-de-lis, right? And I can go down to something like that. And then I can come back and I can say, okay, now let's select the whole thing. And let's do this again, only, you're going to have to kind of watch how you do this. Or, where you place these. Or you can do this and then rotate. But see, they're going to you have to kind of play with this. It'll be on top of each other a little bit. Or what you could do to make sure, you know what, I think I want to leave this first one. You could copy this piece, right? Paste it, and then move it to another location so you get a little different rotate. And I'm going to flip this around a little bit. Okay, and then up, I guess I went one too many there. And you could play with this a little bit, like take out this, take out, this green piece. And then you could use this little piece right there that's got to go. Okay, then you could take, these three colors, right? And you could mirror those around. So you can play with this and you can come up with all kinds of different things depending on where you place it. So, it's a lot of, you can, like I've got things on top of each other because of how I placed them. So if you wanted to, keep a similar motif, you could place those in different directions or different places and get a different result. Does, that make sense?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Okay, so I wanted to make sure that, we had covered that, because that can be a lot of fun. And, when we get down to some of the other things, we'll use this tool in some of the other sections throughout this, these series, right? And were you guys the one that asked me about a twin needle, or was that the expressive group? I think it was the expressive group, but so that you know, I actually watched somebody...
It's the other group.
Yeah, I watched somebody use a twin needle on their machine. But if you do want to try twin needle embroidery, it's kind of interesting. You have to go very slow. You have to use the, small twin needle, and you have to use an offset twin needle, which Schmetz sells, but I believe Janome sells it directly now because it's was originally used for Elna, like one of the series of Elna overlocks, that to make a cover stitch use this specific twin needle. And you can use it. You just have to slow your machine down and play with the tension a little bit. It makes me nervous, but as long as you're using that offset needle, you're okay. My fear is that I'll say, oh, you can use a twin needle, and somebody will go out and buy the 9mm one and totally annihilate their machine, right? So, if you do use it, make sure it's small and that it's the offset one from Janome. And but you can get some interesting techniques. And what kind of reminded me is, see this little section here that's overlapping? I watched Maddie Bushman, one of the Janome educators, actually did something with, she had two colors. One was the metallic thread, and then one was the regular rayon thread when she stitched something like this. So you had like that little overlap of metallic. It was kind of neat. She did go very, very slow, so I wouldn't try it on a big design. But the other thing you could try is there are these double-eyed needles. And you can try that also. But if you're going to do a double-eyed needle, drop the density on some of these sections. Like if you're going to do a double-eyed needle on this to get a little dimension, go in and drop your density down. Hold on, let me find the objects because I've selected. Now I'll just pick this one. Just go into your object details and, drop the density down a little bit, maybe to about 90, 89 to 90. Because you're doubling up thread, okay? So, anyway, you guys have any questions?
No.
No questions?
No.
You're going to do all your homework and turn it in, right? Oh,
I will. Yes.
I had to ask. I had to ask, right? Let me see. This is the border one. So, because we covered a lot of heirloomy things. We did cover fills a little bit and the wing needle. And the wing needle's kind of interesting. But I don't know if you guys are comfortable with stitching with the wing needle or not.
I'm not.
It's not, if it's any comfort, I've done, you have the Elna 9600, right?
Right.
Yeah. I've done twin needle on the Elna 9600, and even if you forget to turn off your trimmer, you're fine. It handles the twin needle just fine.
Okay.
But, so don't be worried about, like, stitching it on the machine. Some of the machines, because of the way they cut the thread, they tell you not to use a trimmer on a wing needle, but the Janome machines handle wing needles just fine. And the wing needle...
Okay.
You guys understood the concept of the wing needle, right? On how to make those holes, to how to pull the thread and open up the hole.
Right. Yes.
Okay, and the only difference, like, I'm going to just get rid of this for a second. And the only difference on the entree, because we haven't really done that entree on wing needle, but the only difference is, first off, you're going to have to do it on a very thin fabric like the organdy, right? And if you're using the wing needle, let me get rid of all of these. And I'll show you what I've got underneath here. Okay, these are my placement and tack down lines, which I'm going to get rid of because I don't need them. because, what I did here, if you're going to use a wing needle, you would want to take the running lines, right? I'm going to change some colors here so we can see what's what. Okay, those pieces in between, you would use a wing needle on. Okay, you've got this cording section here.
Okay.
See, these are those heavy cords, right? Remember I told you to run the lines, and I think I've got some.
Right.
Okay, this one is the satin line. So let me change that. I want to pick a color you can see. Let me change this to pink. Okay, so this you'd want use a wing needle on, and then these two pieces you would use wing needles on. Okay, so I would set this up a little differently. Instead of doing, this section, before these two sections, right? I would put these two sections at the top and have them be a different color. And then these three sections, have them be the same color and let them, this is just going to build up a little bit of stability here, right? Or you could do it a couple different ways. These are your big heavy triple run cording lines underneath. Okay, you could do this center section right here. Let me change the color so you can see it. With the wing needle. It's going to tear that up pretty good, and see how that goes. It's going to depend on the heaviness of your fabric, to be honest. And then you may be able to just treat these, like regular sewing, because you don't necessarily need to chew up over here making entree, right? You need to chew up these right here. But since you're probably going to trim this out anyway, or you're going to attach it to something pretty close to these holes, it probably, if you don't get the results with the wing needle doing this on your fabric, then you can always use wing needle on this too, because it's going to tear up, here. The only thing I would worry about is it would tear up right here too. Okay? So, I would probably try it first with just these being on the wing needle, and these were, the density on this should be okay. But what you could do if you needed to eat up the fabric a little bit more is you could increase the density a little bit, because I had changed the density on this because I didn't need it to be quite as heavy. And, when I made the motif, see how open that is? And, okay, see how open that is? Okay, so, I had changed the density on that when I made the motif. You could always go back in and, remake that motif. That would not be hard. And, adjust the density, make it a little heavier. But I'm thinking that that's probably going to be okay because it's a very little spot. We're at 80%. If I go to 100%, that's pretty little. And, my needle is going to go in there 1, 2, 3, 4 times, right? So, because it's going to go one and then back, right? So that should eat that up pretty good. And then it's going to do the same thing over here. Worst case, you have to clip a little bit of fuzzies in here, frizzes, right? But what I would worry about on the wing needle is right here. So try it and see if you get the results here. If you don't, then go ahead and use a wing needle here and see how it goes. But see those little support bars underneath on the motif? See the support lines? I would extend those down a little bit further to make sure that they catch everything in here, right? Because you still have these lines right here. See the purple? That, those are my triple heavy-duty run lines. So I would extend those red lines in here, right here. You know what I mean? I would make sure that those lines, I created those lines and made sure that they hooked over, maybe not quite that far, but they hooked over those purple lines so you have a support, and put a little more support in here with your regular needle, right? Which means I would have to change this to stitch a little different now that I think about that. I'd have to change this. Like instead of doing that motif in that fashion, I would have to make these lines, you know, something like this. You know, we wanted to use a triple, right? So I would say, okay, here's, I always forget when I have something selected. Okay, I would say, okay, hold on. You might want to make your square and not use the motif function and just make a square so you have that support build up, right? I suppose you could use the motif, but you're going to start and end there, so you're going to want to double check on that. Let me think. A good way to do that. Okay, I'm just trying to think how we can do it in a motif. You could do your motif like this. Okay, so we're starting up here and we're ending here. Okay, so I've got, this is, you know, the little motif, and what would happen, we're starting here and ending here. So if I select that, I'm just going to, you know, if I save it as a motif, what would happen is I would have, you know, other than, you know, I'd have that double stitching, so my bars would be pretty strong here, right? So I could make that whole support system as a motif, and then I could put the satin stitching on top of it. You know, just do like a little run line, you know, run here, you know, do a run line from here to here, and then put your satin stitching on here, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah, so you're adding another motif to the whole design.
Right. You're going to do two motifs. This one would be the first one, so that when you know, this one would be the first motif. So when you make a line, that's your base. That's going to be your base. So you know not to stitch with the wing needle, right? And then you could do a second motif that just consisted of, you know, your satin stitching and take the jump, right? You know, here's your, you know, basically, you know, your satin stitching, right? And, you know, you're going to stop up here. You know, you'd have to change your in and out points. So, because you're going to start here, end here, and then you would just be jumping, basically. You know, taking the jump wouldn't be a bad deal. You don't want to hit it with the wing needle. So go like that, right? And then it would go like that.
Right.
Wrong one. Hold on. You know what I mean? You'd have to space these out so that, you know, you did two motif lines. So you could tear that up with a wing needle without, you know, without really affecting your base, right? And then put those satin lines on it. So, you know, play with this. There's probably a million different ways to do it, but that's probably the quickest way unless you want to create each section on an entree, which, you know, wouldn't be hard, to be honest. You know, because everything's, you know, you're just going to copy and paste everything, right? Like, you know, this would be easy enough to line up. Because you could go, okay, so I have a whole bunch of these on top of each other. I could simply go like this and start lining them up. You know, just make sure you know what order, because I have these out of order. And then, you know, basically you're going to select these, and you're going to use your aligning tools, which are, you know, over here, and you just are going to align them, right? And then you know they're all on top of each other. And you could do the same thing with these. So you don't necessarily have to make a motif. You could, you know, make each individual piece. And, you know, if you make the first piece correctly, you know, the rest of them are fine. And then just keep copying and pasting them on top of each other. And, you know, that might be, you know, might be less stressful than trying to figure out the motif sometime. And it's not hard to do because you have those aligning tools. You know, like if I have 6 of these, I can select 6 of these, and I can align them on their ends. I could align them on their centers, you know. I could do a bunch of different things with the align tools. But somehow you're going to want to make sure that your base that it's sitting on is going to be very secure and not done with a wing needle, right? and then this is what's eating up the fabric. And if we go to a one-to-one view, you can see that's pretty small, right? These are, we have this a little more spread out.
Right.
But, depending on how many times that needle is going to hit on each side of this and how close together those are, you could tear up that fabric pretty good and just end up having to take little snips in between there to cut the holes out. So, do you guys have any questions or anything you want to
How would you align? How would you align the pink that you did?
Oh, the
if
pink
you
ones?
did one of them, yeah.
Okay, I would do it the same way, like, let me get all my green ones out of here, right? Okay, here's all my green ones. I'm going to zoom in around them so I can see what I'm doing and move them out of the way. Okay, so here's all my green ones, right? And we'll just pretend that they're in order, even though I know they're not. So I would select all of those, and I would make sure they were aligned and align them, right? Then I would take one.
Right.
And let's move these to the bottom. Okay, so we know that that one's aligned, and we know that one's aligned, right? So then I'm going to select these two, and I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to align them. Then I'm going to copy them and paste them. And I'm going to pull them down, because once you've got them aligned, see how those, I think I grabbed one of the green ones again. Hold on. I need these two.
Yeah.
You're just going to, I just keep getting that green guy. I want them. So we'll just use the arrows. I can just arrow them down. Then I know that they stay in place. But even if I grab them and move them, then, basically I would just align them. But from this point, okay, like, it gets very easy. I'm going to make this a little bit bigger. Once you have your first couple in order, then you duplicate it, and you've got like 2, and then you've got 4, and now I've got 8, right? So it gets to be exponentially, I would do one section first. We'll move these to the bottom. Okay, and then you've got, like, I've got 4 pink ones now, right? So I would copy those and paste them, and then I would just arrow these down, and then the next round I've got, I've got 8 now. The next round I'll have 16. You know what I mean? So it gets to be a very quick process. And, so that's easy enough to do if you don't want to use the motif.
That seems easier to me.
Sometimes, although the motif sometimes is quicker. It depends on what you're doing. To me, once I know this and I know my settings, right, like on this one, if I'm doing it on Vilene, I know what this is going to do, and I know my settings. I know that the next time I use it, I can't go 4.47, right, because that little line's showing right there. So I know that it's 4.42 and everything's lining up okie schmokies over here, right? But that's because I'm making that one line. I'm doing that as a single motif for that center section, right? This, if I'm going to do it with a wing needle, I have to treat a little different. So it's probably easier to do it this way rather than trying to figure out how far apart do I really have to put these things. Right? Like if I just say this is a motif, then I'd have to figure out how far apart they have to be, and then you're going to go back in and keep adjusting it. So this is probably easier. This baseline would be, easy on a motif because it's going to line up just, you can see on the screen exactly how it's going to line up. You can, if I take this one piece and make it a motif, right? Then you can see what it's going to line up as. I'm just going to put base 1, and aren't you guys proud of me? I remembered to do that this time. All right, so now, that one's easy enough to figure out how it's going to align, right? Because I can see it on the screen. I know what it's going to do. if I say make that a motif, I can see if it's aligning on the screen, right? I can see if I need to adjust it.
Right.
And, that's easy enough to line up. I think it was actually, I'll probably just go back to, I think it was 3.22, but you can see it moving now on the screen, see? I think it was actually 3.22. And see how easy that is to align? Yeah, that's pretty simple. This is what I would, the pink sections I'm showing here is what I would copy and paste on there and get spaced out and just keep moving it, because this as a motif would be much harder to try to figure out to space it. And I mean, you could eventually get it, but it would take you some time to do. But Shirley, you have any questions?
No, not right now.
So you guys will think of all of these for next week, right?
Yes.
So,
Right.
and you should be
It's a little overwhelming.
Yeah, if you guys get to the motif, if you get to making your motifs and figuring out how to place it, and, that's probably the most overwhelming part. And once you get that, then, the rest of this is trial and error. You don't just go out and do this. It's trial and error, and a lot of little test stitches and, oh, I should have done it this way. And sometimes when you test stitch it is when you see, like if you watch it so out, it's when you kind of see where your logic could be better, or, some little tweaks could be made to it.
Well, you make it so easy. And then when we try to do it, it's, okay, now what did she do first?
See? Well, that's why you have the video, right?
Yes. Sometimes that helps.
Yeah. Honestly, I mean, don't be afraid. This is what I tell everybody. You can't break your program, right? You can't break the program. So, don't be afraid to try things. And, the worst thing that happens is you get a bad stitch out on your, your embroidery machine. Don't use good fabric. You're going to test stitch. And, that's really how you're going to learn a lot. And you can use, the other thing that you can remember, if you remember to use, is sometimes this can be helpful, but you have to go out of 3D. So, you can use the stitch player and kind of go through your design to see how it's going to stitch. See how it's stitching? That's where my little needle is. I know that's a triple run stitch now. And I've got this slowed way down, so I'm going to speed it back up. And let me get out of 600 view here. But you can see now I'm sewing, I can play this through. I can see what it's doing. And I can see when it's jerking back and forth, that's a triple run. Okay? And you can speed this up. So if you know one section's fine, just speed up and get through to the next section, right? See how fast that goes? And then, you can slow it down just by using the slider for the section that you want to check. Like if we want to check, how's that, well, I went a little too fast and forgot to stop it, but if you want to check how it sews for like these, right? Then just slow it down at the section that you want to check. I'm going to speed through this real quick. And, like if I want to see how that new section we created is going to stitch out, sometimes watching this, will give you an idea before you put it on your machine what it's going to do. Also, if you turn off your visualizer, that's really when, see how I'm looking at those squares sewing now. Like I would look at that and say, oh, oops, I've got one out of sequence. Oh, I've got a bunch out of sequence, right? That would be the first thing I noticed on this. And, but see how I can tell what's going to happen. I can see my little jump stitches in between there, and I know they're going to get covered up, right? And, and here's my next one. Oh, good, I've got all of these in sequence. That would be my first reaction, right? But the other thing that you can look at is if you have visualizer on, and don't forget you can hit B and then zoom in. If you have visualizer on, see how I have no jump stitches? If I turn this off, I can see my jump stitches. See them? these long ones going from, like that's a jump from here to here, right? But what you have to not worry about is see how it jumps from the center up to the first point? Don't worry about this point right here to here. It doesn't mean anything. It's just the machine starts in the center, so the software starts in the center, and then it moves to the first stitch, okay? But you can see where your jump stitches are. Like, for example, let me get rid of the pink. Get rid of this. Like on this section up here, remember I told you I had stuff out of order? Well, you know, you can see like I've got some funny little things in here, right? Because these are not in order. You know, these are not in any stitch order, so I've got some jumps in there. And, you know, you can always reorder over here. You can look here too. First one, oops, that should not be there. You know, that should be there. You know, that should be there. So, you know, you've got some tools to play with, right? And then I'm getting rid of the jump stitches as I go. So does that make a little more sense?
Yes.
Yep.
And, you know, use your tools and do small segments. And, you know, and you'll learn a lot. You know, a lot of it is, you know, I still, you know, I'll do a test stitch on a design and I could swear I have all the in and out places in the right spot, right? Like this Trudeau line. I can tell you I have my in and out places in the wrong spot because I test stitched it. But I could have sworn I had, you know, changed those around, and maybe I did, and maybe I hit undo, or I saved it in a different file, or, you know. So, you know, I always test stitch. You know, even on the design sets, I test stitch everything because, you know, there's just things sometimes that, you know, you really might want to change. And, you know, in and out points are a big deal. You know, if you don't want a bunch of jumps, then you're going to look at your in and out points. We were talking about earlier about the double run, and let me get rid of this and reopen that because I want to show you what I'm talking about. Okay, when I made these borders here, right, these motifs here, I'm missing one on this one, but, you know, that one has the double and the one has the triple, right? You know what? As a matter of fact, I think I know where those might be. Hold on. Those are in Jan format. There we are. Okay. So you guys should have this file. And here's this and here's this one. The difference between these two are one has a triple run here and one has a double, and you can't really see that on the screen. But if I click on this, you know, and I go into my settings, or I ungroup it at this point, you know, this I think is the triple run line. So it makes it stitch a little heavier. You'll note I also, you know, I increased my stitch length because I kind of played with it, but, you know, if I wasn't sure and I didn't want any runs in between there, I could actually make the stitch length like 10 and it would be fine. And I'll show you what I mean. See, it didn't change any of the properties on this. See how there's no stitches in here? Okay, because, you know, I just increased the length to the point where, you know, it would not give me any stitches. And, you know, it's not going to not put these stitches in if I put it up to 10. Okay, this one is, you know, see where it doesn't, hold on, I've got to ungroup it. This one I did a backtrack on. And what I did the backtrack on was, here's this, and then here's this stitch. If you look at this, this is just a single run line. Okay, so you get rid of this. This is also just a single run line, but what I did was this. Okay, I took this piece, and it's a single run line, so it wasn't quite heavy enough. But when I test stitched this, I thought, oh, it was a little too heavy, right? So I took this line, and I said backtrack. And what that does, if you watch over here, what's going to happen when I say backtrack, it reverses itself, puts this piece right on top of it, and it reverses. Now, let me undo. Okay, see, here's the piece right here, right? That's where I start.
Mm-hmm.
And, the way it's running is my start and end are in the same place, right? But it's just a single. And I didn't want to do a triple. I wanted lighter. So I could have just copied and pasted it, but this tool kind of comes in handy because it backtracks exactly on top of it. There's my backtrack. So now I have two pieces down here. When that comes in handy is when you're doing something like an outline and you're doing an outline and maybe you've got like a little curly Q like this, right? You know how you have those little curly Qs and things, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and you have to get back over here. So that comes in handy because this right now is a single run stitch. If I say backtrack, see where it comes to here? Watch that little square. Let me undo. Here's my square, right? I need to get back to here to go on to the next section. Here's my square. That tells me where it ends. If I say backtrack, I have to select it first. Hold on. Okay, if I say backtrack, it starts here and backtracks exactly back to here. And what's nice is if I would want, like if I'm doing like vines and I need to travel with this, I can backtrack with this and I can still come into the settings and I can say, I want that to be a triple run line, and I can use that backtrack to duplicate exactly on top of that stitching, right? From the end of the first line and backtrack perfectly around to the end of the beginning of the first line so that, I don't have any jumps, and I can change the stitch type to a triple run to make it heavier. And then from here, I can go on to, maybe I've got a leaf or something, right? Or, maybe I'm going to come back and travel to something else. So that's when that backtrack comes in handy. Okay, now, other tools that we haven't really looked at too much is, this is a repeat. Okay? So repeat, let me show you what that does. Let me get rid of these. Okay, I have this selected. This is repeat. When I repeat it, it does exactly what it says. This is a repeat. Okay, let me get rid of it. See where I stop, which means I start up here, right? If I say repeat, it literally just repeats it. And I'm going to have a jump there because it's like a duplication. See my jump? Because I started here and ended here, started here and ended here. So the repeat is literally a repeat. You would want to, I could have repeated up here just fine. I could have said, you know what, repeat, because I started and ended in the same place, right? This one, I would want to backtrack and not repeat on. Okay? So those are neat little tools, and there's some other ones that we'll play with as we go along in the program, but those are some neat little tools to think about when you're digitizing. And it's a time saver when you're doing, something that has a lot of scroll work, or that you need to travel out to something and come back exactly on the same line. Those are just lifesaver tools. Or for this, if you want to make an outline go around twice, right? Or, if this had been a triple stitch, it doesn't matter what the stitch type is on that repeat. You know what, we'll just do a motif line. Okay, there's my motif line. If I said repeat it, it would repeat exactly the motif line. So now I have two of these motif lines on top of each other, right? So it doesn't matter what the line type is. Backtrack's going to backtrack it. Repeat is going to repeat it. So, and as you go along and you'll forget about those tools, and as you go along it'll dawn on you, oh wait, yeah, I know there's a tool that does that. And then, you'll remember these. Okay, do you guys have any questions?
No.
I'm good.
You're good? Shirley, you good?
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay. We're going to, when we work on the applique next week, we're going to start with some pretty basic applique, and then we'll work up to a little more advanced applique. And then we're going to get through the heirloom applique techniques, which are, reverse applique, shadow work applique, shadow work embroidery. It's really similar to applique, so I kind of included it in there. And then what they call Australian window pane applique, which is kind of neat. So that series is going to be all about applique, the different types of stitches you can use, the different types of applique, and when when to apply them. And but if you guys practice on this, a lot of the things that you're learning in this, we're going to continue using as we go along through the rest of the series.
Okay.
So, and if you have any questions, I actually am home for all of May and most of June, I believe. I know, it's nice. I'm sitting here thinking, wow, because for 2 years I was never home. But, so I'm actually going to be home for quite a bit. At least at this point, I have no travel plans, I'll put it that way. And I'm kind of looking forward to that. So, if you have homework or you have questions on any of this at any time, don't feel funny about asking me. Send me your file, tell me what problems you're having or, what question you have. And, and we'll go from there. I really, want to make sure you guys get all of these little things because each little thing kind of builds on each other.
Okay.
So, but by now you should be motif queens. You don't sound convinced there.
Maybe princess.
Maybe a gesture.
Nah, you guys are doing good. Once you do this a couple of times, you'll see the potential on the motifs is a lot of fun. Because, we did straight lines, right? I don't have to do straight lines. I can do curves. Remember, you can do curves, right? Why does that not look like a 200 by 200 millimeter hoop? Like I could do something like this. And let's go pick a motif. And we're going to pick one of the ones that we did at some point here. Let's see what we've got. Oh, we'll do this. Here's our little, that's the one that we redid and made sure that it worked right. But we'll go ahead and we'll use this one. But, see how I've got this big flower one here? You could make a circle and adjust that to make flower petals. But I'm going to go ahead and use my daisy for right now. Okay, so there's my daisy. My spacing's pretty good. And, see what I can do with that daisy? And I don't even have to adjust it much on this. But I can if I need to. If I have a motif that's acting funny, then I can come in here and I can, move these around to make them fit right. Okay? And if I have, if I need to space something, like if I have a motif that just no matter what I do isn't going to behave, I've got these little controls that I can shrink this a little bit to make it fit. Nobody is going to notice one little flower being smaller. Or, if you want to get really fancy, you could do this with every other flower, right? See how cute that is? And, so you have a lot of control with these motifs. And, and they're just a lot of fun to play with. And, especially when, you know how to make them yourself, right? And see, I can move that around to fit in between. So I can do a lot of different things with the motifs, and I can create some very quick things. If I'm doing something over and over and over, I don't have to keep punching it over and over and over. I can just pull that out and use it. And it doesn't have to be like heirloom stuff. You can make some really big motifs. Like the one flower I was talking about, that one flower thing. Hold on. I always forget to unselect things. I was talking about that one flower petal that I was kind of playing with, right? And I don't have it aligned properly, but to give you an idea, if I had, aligned it properly, then I could go in and say, use this motif. Let's go select, the one motif that, right here, which is a huge flower. And, if I had this lined up properly where it was going from here to here, I could really align and make a flower, right? But, at this point I could hit this and, I can skew it around and I can make some different patterns, right? I can have a little bit of fun with this, see? I can move it. These little skewing arrows let me skew things around. These arrows let me do different things. See how I flip them? So, if you can do a lot of different things with the motif, they don't have to look like they're on a line. You can move them all over the place, resize them, anything you want. And, you can actually, Barbara, if you want.
I have a question.
Uh-huh. Go ahead.
I have that Martha's Minis program, and I could take one of those designs, and couldn't you turn one of those designs into a motif and put it like in the middle of the entree?
Yeah, you could.
Could you take somebody else's design and make a motif out of it?
Yep, you can. And just remember that if you make it when it's not one solid color, that you're going to have a color change every single time and you can't do anything about it. So you're going to want to make it one color.
Okay.
And, otherwise, either that or you're going to want to change colors for every motif that sews.
Oh, okay.
You know what, I'm not limited by, like, let me see what I've got going on here. I'm not limited by, like, I can pull anything out. Let me go find something real quick. I could say, trying to find something small, but I don't think I have anything that's particularly small, so we'll just go with one of these. Okay, I could even take something like this, right, and make it a motif. The only thing is, I'm probably going to have a lot of jump stitches because, if I didn't make it where it starts here and ends here, then I'm going to have jumps, right? But, let me zoom out.
Right.
I can make something this large into a motif if I want to. Or I could come in here and I could pull things apart and say, I really just want the flower. And, if I wanted to take the time to get rid of a lot of things, I could just take the flower center section or, something like this. So I can do parts of things as a motif too. Right? And that'll, if that's the size I make it, then that's the size I make it. And what happens is, what happens is I'm still going to have to tell it where it starts and ends. So I would say, let's start you here, and let's end you right here. Okay, so that's created now. Let me get rid of this and just make a line, a very large line, right? It's going to come in as a motif at the size that I made it. Okay, see how large that is? It's telling me it's 100 millimeters. Spacing's 114. I can't really see what's going on here, so I would probably do it like this. And if I don't like that, come back in here and say, really, I need to space that a little, like, let's try 99 millimeters, right? And there we go. Now I've got a little overlap. And that, so, but, anything that you can basically, open in the program, you can turn into a motif. It's just a matter of, logically, how many jumps do you want? How many color changes do you want to do? So.
Okay.
Shirley, you have any questions?
No.
So you're just she's much too quiet, isn't she?
I'm just trying to gather it all in.
We're just teasing you because Barbara's been around Nancy for a couple of years now. She knows. And so.
Yeah, when Nancy's not here, it's quiet.
It is very quiet, isn't it? Although, I miss her because I haven't had my Nancy fix this week at all. So, but
Was she out yesterday? I mean,
she
Tuesday?
no, she I told her she needs to quit making all those quilts, but her back is hurting from making quilts, like from standing up and cutting,
Mm.
and so
Yeah.
she's kind of kind of down and out, I think, right now. So hopefully she'll be feeling better next week. But she's on a mission to finish these quilts, and she's made, I think, several of them at this point. So, but, well, ladies, if you have no questions, I'm going to kind of turn you loose, and this will
Okay.
be posted tomorrow. For there's a little bit of information in it. There's not a lot in it, but all of the videos. You're not having any trouble seeing the videos, right?
Yeah, we're okay.
Right.
Okay. So, those videos, they'll be online, and then, of course, you can always download them, and then, I'll be sending out the DVDs at the end of the series. And, but again, don't feel funny about asking me any questions, even if it's on something that is, way back at the beginning. And, that's what I'm here for, and that's why you took the webinars, right?
Right.
Right. Well, I'll do my homework this time.
Okay. I'll be
I'll do last
nagging at
time's
you.
homework.
Yeah. I'll be nagging at you guys. And Shirley, I did get your registration too for the EQ thing.
Okay.
And that's so, I just
Do
wanted
you
to let
teach
you know.
that also?